and kings, this is Sharrona Reaves, and you are listening to These Three Things podcast, a podcast for women where the conversation is about us, our relationships, and every area of our lives. This show is about unity, support, kindness, and keeping it 100% real.
So we can rise up, move. We've got the victory. Burdens loose. These three things. Higher, higher we go. Don't stop, we're too close. Free your mind, let's go. These three things.
Hey, queens, kings, and good people. I am Sharrona Reaves. You are listening to These Three Things podcast. Thank you for returning to part 2 of mother and son relationships. I am talking with my son, Kenden Reaves, in this episode, just about a lot of things. I didn't plan on making this a part 2, but after I started editing, I was getting close to an hour. I still had probably about 45 minutes more of recording to go through, and I just didn't want to edit too much out. I wanted for my listeners to hear, especially if you have sons, everything that my son Kenden had to say. And I also hadn't even gotten to my 3 things yet. So I was probably looking at about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes had I not just decided to do a part 2. So I just kind of want you guys to understand how that process works and how I end up with 2 episodes. It's not always to bring you back for next week. As a matter of fact, I kind of like it when it's clean and it's about 50 to 54 minutes, including the 3 things, so that you can get a good hour of listening in and then go on about your day. And as our girl Tab says, have yourself a wonderful day. But sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. So we're going to be focusing on part 2 today. Thank you guys so much for listening to last week. I got a lot of feedback from listeners about my pregnancy story and how I was terminated from a job for being pregnant. Thank you guys. I really appreciate that. I have definitely moved past it. As a matter of fact, I can't even remember the last time that I've told that story. It's been so long ago, but I do remember it like it was yesterday when I start to think about it and as I was telling it in last week's episode. But yeah, I've definitely moved on from that. I wish that person the best. And me and my son and family have been doing just fine. And God has definitely provided for us as he promised that he would do that day in the abortion clinic. So saying that because if you ever hear a small, still voice saying anything to you that you know is the right thing to do, you probably should listen to it. Because that still voice is usually your intuition, it's your soul, it's the Holy Spirit, I call it, basically trying to guide you on what is right and what is good. I start this episode with my son, and I'm asking him basically, do you feel that I was harder on you than your sister? Kenden's the oldest, and I wanted to know if he felt I was harder on him than I was on his sister Kim. So that's the question that we're starting this episode with. So thanks again for returning for part 2. Mother and son relationships with my son, Kenden Reaves. I'll see you at the end of this episode, for real this time, with these 3 things. Enjoy. For almost a century, Scarrett Bennett Center's historic Gothic campus has been a choice location for dream weddings in Nashville. Consistently rated one of Music City's best places to get married by The Knot, Wedding Wire, and Toast of Nashville, Scarrett Bennett Center offers 3 timeless venues for your wedding: a 20-person elopement chapel, a 300-person wedding chapel, and a breathtaking garden. From rehearsal to reception, Scarrett Bennett Center is ready to help you create the intimate, historic wedding of your dreams. Visit our website at scarrettbennett.org/weddings for more information. Do you feel like with that being said, do you feel I was easier on you or harder on you than your sister?
Easy, harder.
I was harder?
Yeah. Yes.
You want to elaborate?
it was harder. It was like because I was the oldest, so you had more priorities for me because I had to make sure my sister was okay. I had to make sure you was okay, and as far as I could,
Mm-hmm.
and since I'm the oldest, and if I don't do good, then I'm messing up because I should be the example for my little sister.
Mm-hmm.
So I did feel like, yeah, I was a little bit hard. You was a little bit harder on me.
Yeah. Did you feel like, as being the man in the house, once your dad and I split up, that you had to protect me and Kim?
No doubt, yes.
Okay, so there's a story that you and your sister tell me. We were living in Ocala, Florida at the time, and I was the head coach at a junior college there.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim was walking home from school, and some boys in the neighborhood were
Yeah.
following her home. Tell me about that.
Well, like you said, we was living in Ocala, Florida. You was working at Central Florida, and I stayed at home from school. I don't know what happened, but I stayed
Mm-hmm.
at home, and Kim was coming home, and it was the same boys that was in the neighborhood that usually stay there. They were trying to follow my sister home, trying to talk to her and stuff like that, and they told her like, if your brother's not home, we coming in with you. And she immediately got scared, like,
Mm-hmm.
cause she was like, "Well, if they come in, what's gonna really happen? Are they gonna rape me and stuff like that?" So that
Mm-hmm.
was going through her head and stuff. And she just prayed when she got to the door and was like hoping that I was there. And when she opened the door and she saw me there, she said
Mm-hmm.
she just felt so relieved that I was there. When they saw me, they tried to play it off like we were just making sure your sister was, safe, and we wanted to walk her home.
Mm-hmm.
So it really meant a lot to me that
To be home.
yeah, to be home and to know that she can count on me. Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Talk to me about how you and Kim's relationship has evolved over the years, because being the only man in the house with two women, you feel responsible as a young man to protect us. And then I'm, harder on you because you are the oldest. I know you and Kim didn't always have the best relationship when y'all were younger.
Mhm.
So obviously that has evolved over the years. Talk to me about that and having a sister and that evolving.
Well, when we was really young, my sister used to always tell on me. Used to always tell on me, man. Every little thing I did, she would run and tell you and dad, and I just got tired of it. We just kept our distance from each other. But as time evolved and stuff, I had a bond with my sister. Being the oldest, I knew I had a big responsibility and stuff, but I didn't know my sister was really just looking at everything I did. And so I really had to be careful what I did around my sister, because I didn't want to put out a bad image and lead her off to doing something that's not good. So, I always try to uplift my sister, do everything I really could do in a way that she needs it, as a female.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to be a good brother too, because I was so rough and all that stuff, tall. I want to do boyish stuff, but my sister, she's girly. She like get her nails done and stuff like that. So I always told my sister, you can tell me anything. If you don't feel like you can tell mom or dad, you can always tell me. And this is gonna stay with me. You're never gonna have to worry about it coming up, back up when we have an argument or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can tell me anything. If you need a vent or you need to talk about boy issues, you can always talk to me. Or, hey, my boyfriend did this to me. Do you know what that means? Or anything like that. Then, I
Mm-hmm.
can be here for her. And I want her to know that she can always, for the rest of her life, count on me, to be there for her.
Yeah. I think she knows that, because there have been times that you have told on Kim about things that you felt like I needed to know.
Yeah.
And she would be livid with you, but you always had her protection at the forefront of your mind. Like, even when you knew she was going to be so angry with you and not speak to you for weeks, you would tell me what you thought I needed to know. I think she appreciates that now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't then. She wanted to claw your eyes out back then, but she appreciates it now. So I know you do, but, just for saying sake, I know you remember when your dad and I split up in Mississippi.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts as a young man at that time? Because how old? You were in middle school, correct? You were in middle school when we split up.
Yeah, back then I really wanted y'all to work out as a whole family. I always wanted my mom and dad to be in the same house, but the vibe of the house and how the fights and the tussling and me, my sister crying and me having to be there for her, I just didn't like. I I was happy when y'all broke up, when y'all got divorced. Now, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like I didn't want to keep seeing that, and it was and I didn't want to have that image of how to treat a woman, because that's not how you should ever treat a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting, verbally fighting, physically, it should never have to come to that.
Mm-hmm.
When you and dad left, it was a lot better. It was for the better, and I even asked my sister about it, and she agreed with me. It was for the better.
Yeah. Because you felt like it was just more peace.
Yeah, more peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wished it worked out because I really needed my dad. Like, he was there physically, but he wasn't there, emotionally. When I needed him mentally.
Yeah.
How to deal with stuff. How do I deal with breakups?
Yeah.
How do I deal with that aspect of life? He wasn't there for me. I had to learn it on my own.
At that time that we split up, I put us in therapy. And did you feel like that the therapy helped you at all at the time, just to be able to talk it through and process? Our therapist was Leslie Fye, who Leslie Fye has been introduced to the show for all of my listeners who, again, if this is your first episode, you can go back and listen to episodes this season where I introduced my therapist to These Three Things podcast. Her name is Leslie Fye. She is in Starkville, Mississippi. And she is still our family therapist to this day. We all still call Leslie when we need to process or have a conversation or work some things through. So how was that for you, being a man
Mm-hmm.
and your therapist was a woman
Mm-hmm.
and a white woman? Um, and you'll have to get, for those of you, if you're new to the show, you'll have to go back and listen because Leslie and I addressed the whole, I was a little hesitant about making her our therapist because she was white and a woman. How was that for you, Kenden? Like, did you feel like you were getting anything out of that for you at that time?
Me and Leslie were talking about mostly confidence, but no offense to Leslie, because she's a amazing therapist. But I just needed a black man, a black man
Mm,
therapist.
yeah.
Somebody that knows what I'm going through. And no offense to Leslie, because like I said, she's an amazing woman, but she didn't know what I was going through, as far as like the different kind of stuff that a black man has to go through in this world,
Yeah.
like having to go the extra mile for stuff, and I just needed that. It just wasn't a connection, with me and Leslie, as far as her understanding
Yeah.
what I'm going through,
Yeah.
as far as in that way.
So, to parents who are listening to this, would you recommend when a breakup happens in a marriage to put your son in therapy? If at all, because there were no black therapists in Starkville, which is how we ended up with Leslie. And I do agree. I think that Leslie was more suited for Kim and I because she was a woman. And, while Leslie has studied to be culturally appropriated as a therapist, you're still a man though,
Hmm.
that is a difference there. But would you recommend parents putting their sons in therapy with a black male therapist, if they have the opportunity to do that in their area?
I would say yes. Um, and you can if you have a amazing relationship with your kid, you can talk to them too. I want to have an amazing relationship with my kids. I want my daughter to be able to tell me that she had sex before. I want my son to be able to tell me that he slept with some girl. I want to have that kind of relationship with my kids, so that it's nothing that they can't tell me. I don't want to
Yeah,
feel like they have to hold something from me. I want to teach them, the real deal.
the real things.
Because, the world's going to teach them the real deal. They're not going to feed them no baby stuff.
Right.
So that's how I feel.
So do you feel that, because what about for the kids who feel that the emotions that they feel, they're not ready to discuss with their mom and dad? Because I feel like that's the reason why. I mean, and you can correct me because I don't want you to, I don't want to speak for you. And the purpose of this episode is to just have an authentic and real conversation to shed light and wisdom and clarity and a lot of other things on those who are listening who may have sons who are going through a divorce, who have divorced and their sons are still growing up. And I want to be as authentic as we can. So and I know I have not been the perfect parent, and I want you to be honest with this. Do you feel like that I was available for you to talk to at that time? Because my process of putting you and Kim in therapy was because I wanted y'all to have a place to say things that you couldn't say to me at the time. Because maybe you were angry, just as angry with me as you were with your dad. And you needed to be able to vent that to somebody who could help you process those emotions. Do you feel like I was there for you during that time, or do you feel like I wasn't?
I feel like during your career, you was mostly gone most of the time, and it's no shaming you because you had to provide for us and you had to do what you had to do. So the times when I really needed you, you were gone most of the time. So I was just having to stick stuff deep inside, and it's hard to bring everything out all at once. I try not to think about it for too long. I always try to find something to do to not having to think about stuff I was going through.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, babe, when you needed me the most. That's hard to hear.
I mean, it's no offense to you because I know you had a.
No, I know in the spirit in which you saying it. I get it. It's just still hard to hear. Cause it's real. It's the truth. I was on the road a lot. I was gone a lot, and trying to manage it and make it all work and keep it all together, and most of the time not really feeling supported in the environments in which I was working. So yeah. I mean, it's hard to hear, but it's the truth. And I hope that parents who are listening to this, and if any of this is things in which you've gone through or are going through, it's real, and our kids are really dealing with real things and real emotions that sometimes because we're dealing with our own set of things too, we don't always pay attention to. And so I appreciate you being honest about it and just saying, because it needs to be heard and talked about. Kenden, what are some of the pitfalls that you've dealt with and some of your friends in your peer group have dealt with that you've seen young Black men fall into?
Lust, pornography, lost, not knowing who they are. I think that's the biggest thing.
Being lost?
Yeah.
Can you discern that in what ways?
Being lost, so now I'm about to try to be like my favorite rapper when that's not even my destiny.
Your personality or anything. Right.
But it's my favorite rapper, so I'm going to try to follow his way because it's working out for him, and I like the light that he's showing. So let me take that route instead of finding a route for me and something that I love.
Do you think that having a mentor as a young man can help you navigate through some of those things that you just said? Having a strong male mentor.
I feel like first it comes with what are you truly passionate about, and then finding a mentor in that section. Instead of finding a mentor and then trying to find out what you're really passionate about, because the person that might be mentoring you might not know enough in the direction you want to go.
Right.
So I feel like you should know yourself, or get to know yourself more in the direction you want to go before you get to a mentor.
What about church in the life of a young man? How are our young Black males looking at church nowadays? Because I know for me growing up, church was always like base for me. And I think for many years of our lives, I always took you and your sister to church. But now that you guys have, become more adults, I kind of leave it up to you to, choose for yourself. Is church a factor? And by church, I mean, let me rephrase that. By having a relationship with God, Is that on the forefront of your mind, or is it based on whether you were even brought up in church or not? Are you guys out here second guessing whether God is even real? Like, how does where does the church factor play into the lives of young black men today?
I'll have to say that it's so much evil in your eye, and like that. I'm not saying in your eyes as mean like, when I'm looking at you evil, but like phone, TV, you don't see anything that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
You see mostly negative, and they barely talk about church unless you go in to seek, going on a personal limb to go to church and look for stuff for church. But if you just an average person and you're lost and you don't know who Jesus is, it's hard to find them.
Mm-hmm.
With how social media is set up, how rap is taught. You don't hear a lot of people talk about God in rap music.
Mm-hmm.
All they really do is praise is drugs, women,
Money.
money.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't really know who God is, money is your God.
Mm-hmm.
And people, more and more people not going to church.
And why do you think that is?
People don't have the desire to go to church no more.
Why not? Be honest.
I feel like most people are questioning if God's even real. Some people, which is truly sad, but because I be talking to people and like, if God's real, why he let this and that happen? If God's real, why people having to go through what they're going through?
Have you questioned it?
I'm pretty sure everybody at one point has questioned if God's even real, but but for me, I'm gonna stick by what I was raised with, and I'm gonna follow the roots, and I'm gonna follow who God is. I feel like God was the reason why I'm here today. When I look on life, I see a bunch of useless stuff. Like, how am I gonna get to the kingdom of heaven? Like, with all this stuff around me,
Mm-hmm.
like with internet. I mean, talking negative from when I look at TV. All of this is about money, power, sex. When I go out, everybody wants to get girls. Nobody wants to talk about the Son of God. I feel like every day is making it harder for people to follow God because everybody's distracted. More and more people are losing sight of God because they're distracted by something else.
How do we fix that? Because I can totally get how y'all's generation can question whether God is real. I mean, you guys have grown up in a generation where you've been fortunate to see a black president, for 8 years of your young life, and now a black female as vice president. But you've also grown up in the climate where you don't know if you're gonna go to school and one of the students at your school may shoot the whole school up and kill y'all. You've had to do drills in school for live shooters, and we, as the American people, as adults, as this country, as this nation, are so enthralled with having our guns that we're allowing our children to be killed for the sake of us being able to bear arms. Imagine dying and laying there and thinking that this isn't a third world country. This is the United States of America. And I'm probably going to lose my life today because we're allowing this to happen in our country. How do we grab hold of the minds of all of these young men and keep them focused on being able to see realistically what's going on and not letting these things distract you or cause you to doubt who God is and if he's real? Because, I mean, like I said, you guys have definitely grown up in a generation where the adults, we have let y'all down.
To me, I feel like you have to, at this point, I feel like we have to force more church down people's throats nowadays because there's so many distractions out. I mean, when you guys were growing up, it was mandatory to go to church. Like, y'all don't have, it's no, I'm not going to church. Y'all had to go to church. Nowadays, it's like, You going to church? Oh, you ain't been to church in 6 months.
It's more casual.
Yes.
Can you look back over your life and have and identify God in your life?
Yes, I can see it from God always providing for us. I won't say me because you the one who really had to go through it, but I want to say struggle. Like
Mm-hmm.
God's always provided for us. Being as you were a single parent, raising 2 kids. I mean, me and Kim really didn't go left. Me doing drugs, me
Amen.
sleeping with everybody. I got 2 babies on the way.
Right.
And Kim out here doing whatever she wants to do and stuff like that. We stay solid to who we truly are, and then do all that stuff. And with you having a busy job and not being there sometimes because you having to work and go recruit and stuff like that, I feel like God has always been there for us in a certain way. Even when we didn't have time to go to church and stuff, I feel like He's always been there. Sometimes I didn't pray,
Mm-hmm.
but He was still there.
Yeah. I think about that often. I do think about what great kids you guys have turned out to be for some of the things that we've gone through.
So I always felt like God was always there in a certain type of way, making sure that I didn't slip.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And protecting you.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the experiences that we've had. We've traveled to a lot of places. We've done a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
While there was a lot of moving that happened as a result of my career, there were a lot of fun things that we did too, like traveling with the team. You guys were on private planes at very young ages, traveling to vacations. Do you remember the time we saw Triple H in the Kentucky hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You was more excited than me. I was trying to play it cool. I can't be over there feeling like, too big and stuff. I mean, be like a big fan, so I had to play it smooth, chill.
I remember you were just saying it so seriously, like, Mom, that's Triple H. Now, anyone who's had sons, your sons, a lot of sons get into the wrestling thing. And Kenden was heavy into the wrestling thing. I mean, he had everybody. He had The Rock, Triple H, John 316, John Cena, is that his name?
Yeah, John Cena.
Undertaker. Who else? Batista.
Yeah, Kane.
You were heavy in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were heavy into the wrestling thing. So because he was into it, I got into it because I was constantly buying like the little action figure wrestler things,
I had the games and everything.
Yeah. And so I began to know who these people were. So we were in Kentucky. I think we were playing in the NIT championship at West Virginia at Kentucky, or the semifinal game at Kentucky. And Triple H was in our hotel having breakfast when we had come down for breakfast that morning. And I'm just in there eating, and you just, kind of elbowed me. You was like, Mom, that's Triple H. And I'm like, where? You was like, right there, Mom, right there. I'm like, that's Triple H. Oh, my God. I was hyped. And you were looking at me like, will you please calm down? But I was just like so hyped for you because I knew how much you loved those guys, And Triple H, he was cool.
Yeah.
He was a really cool guy.
He gave us some tickets too.
He did.
Yeah, me and Dad went to it.
Yeah, he did. Cause did they come to West Virginia? What did they do? Where were the tickets for?
It was like to a WWE wrestling event. I forgot where they gave us tickets to, but everybody was in there yelling and stuff like that. And me and Dad were like, "What they yelling? What they? Why don't they just watch the show?" And then mid wrestling event, we was in there yelling too. We was all in.
So y'all got in there and got yelling.
We got intense too.
You got to come up to the level. You got to level up. That's so cool. And then like we've taken some we've Cancuned. We have, where else have we gone?
Virgin Islands.
The Virgin Islands. You went on a couple of other trips with us. Where's the one
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
Hawaii was nice.
Yeah, Hawaii was nice.
You are listening to These Three Things podcast with Sharrona Reaves and Kenden Reaves, Mother and Son Relationships, Part 2. We'll be right back. Do you need to get a handle on your stress? Need to get better control of your emotions? Join the 19,000 plus students who have taken Dr. Patricia Thompson's 21-day crash course in emotional intelligence. You'll learn practical techniques that will help you manage your emotions, improve your relationships, and get ahead in your career, all in the comfort of your own home. Learn more at her website, silverliningpsychology.com, on the self-study page. Again, that's silverliningpsychology.com. Think about all of the basketball players, Kenden, that you have met throughout your life that are NBA players now that you saw play college basketball and was in the same gym shooting with them, like Grant, that's with the Celtics now, and you're in the same auxiliary gym shooting with them or practice facility. Like, when you think about that, what do you think about being around college sports at such a high level most of your life?
It shows me that if you grind and you put in that work will show off.
Yeah.
I've seen so many people in the gym constantly.
Yep.
And I'm like, dang, they don't get tired.
Yeah.
But you can see, but now you see the results playing off. So
Yeah. So let's talk about your basketball experience, because in the process of moving a lot, and this is something, mothers, that you will need to know if you are a single mom, and even if you are married and your child is in sports, and you guys and you and your husband, your spouse, have not typically been in the sports world. The AAU circuit for men's basketball is completely different than it is for women's basketball, because it just seemed like to me, and you can speak from your own experience, Kenden, but just like the whole AAU world it was so hard to find a team where the people genuinely gave a good doggone about you. It was more about there was very little development in boys AAU. And girls, we're trying to continue to develop your skill while you're in the AAU program. What I had to learn by trial and error was that that's not happening on the boys' side. There really isn't very much skill development. Either you come talented and you're going to be a key role player or a key player on the team, or you just get tossed to the side, regardless of what you could bring to the table.
the biggest thing about AAU was being on the right team, because you can be on a stacked team and y'all go to events where the coaches are at.
Right.
Or you could be on a team that's average and go to all the big events,
Right.
So I feel like the places that you're going determines, like, being seen by coaches, and because, you can be on a team that's going places, but you're not even playing at all.
So are you really done with basketball? You feel like it's over for you? Because, I loved watching you play. I have always thought you are a prolific scorer, Kenden. You can score the ball. That is what you do to me. And you have a hook shot. I've not seen anybody else that can do that hook shot except for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And a lot of people feel the hook shot is an old school shot, but your hook shot is beautiful. It is one of the most beautiful shots I've seen, and you mastered it. For you, do you miss it? Do you feel like,
I'll say it like this. If the opportunity comes for me to be on another basketball team, I would take it and I would go hard for it. But if it doesn't, then, it wasn't meant to be, and I'm going to start this business and I'm going to go hard on that.
All right. Well, in closing, thank you for sharing. Thanks
for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say to parents, just about, especially to my mothers who are listening, because this is a podcast for women? Is there something that you would like to say to mothers to help them or encourage them in raising their sons that, they might need to hear?
A woman can't really teach a boy how to be a man, but I know that a lot of men don't know either, because their dad never was there in their life. So, it's kind of hard being there in places where you don't know how to be there for your kid.
Right.
But
so what should the moms do? Like, what can mothers with young sons do?
I would have to say a mentor might be the best thing, but he needs a male figure in his life, a good example to know what's right and wrong as far as dealing with a relationship, dealing with how to have confidence, how to, how to move around in life as a black man, how to approach people, because we don't have black men don't really have that many role models unless they hoop or rap, and everybody's not guaranteed to make it in sports. So what does that falls down to? Rap, and a lot of rappers not talking about anything positive. So it's easy to fall down in the trap where you toting the gun and your pants are sagging, and now it's hard for you to find a job and you got to make ends meet because you got a kid to feed, and that's pressure.
Yeah.
Now it's like now I'm forced to have to do something, and not anybody, not even a black man, not even a white man or nobody wants to be put in that position.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's so important for a kid to have his father. I won't say his father because his father, a good example, a good male example around in his life. Because he could have his father around and he could be a terrible example.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it's very important for a black man to have a great male figure in his life. And I feel like also that us as black, in the black community, I feel like we should have more heroes in different categories in life, not just in sports and basketball.
Yeah. More visible heroes.
So we don't have to just look at only a few sources of heroes,
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Mom.
You're awesome. You know that I feel that way about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Mom. It's all love.
You've been listening to These Three Things podcast. I am Sharrona Reaves with my son, Kenden Reaves, and we'll be right back with these three things.
Yeah.
If you want to find more information about this episode and my guest, go to www.these3-things.com. Go to our podcast page and click on this episode. Hey, we're back. This is Sharrona Reaves. I am with Kenden Reaves. You are listening to These Three Things podcast, and it is time for these three things. Number 1, what my son taught me. So, moms, let's face it. We love our sons, and we are the first women that they love too. Sons fill a place in our hearts that really is hard for any of us to articulate. But if you have a son, you know that feeling I'm talking about. About halfway through middle school, I started to see the shift happen in my son. Well, if your son is young, you may not know yet, but the shift when your son starts to experience things as a young man that you aren't equipped to tell him how to deal with it. And really, he doesn't want you to. But often we're trying to teach and reteach and overteach and teach and teach and teach. But when the shift happens, what your son wants to know more than anything is how would a man deal with this? By the time Kenden's shift happened, his dad and I were no longer together. So I did what every single mom, divorced mom, or woman raising a son does. I tried to play both roles, mom and dad. I had to be tough, y'all. I had to make him tough. I had to correct every mistake, call them all out, ride him like a wild animal, and show no sympathy. Well, I don't mind sharing with y'all that didn't work. And I had it all wrong. All those antics did was make my son doubt his own abilities to handle situations and underdevelop his confidence in who he was. What my son needed was support, my encouragement, and praise when he was getting it right, and a stern but loving redirect when he wasn't. He needed me to teach him how to trust his own mind and his decisions and how to think things through and change course when it didn't go so well. Luckily, I checked myself before I wrecked my son. I apologized and realized what he actually needed. I'm glad my son was vocal and spoke up and was honest with me about what he needed from me. I'm glad that he was able to teach me how to be what he needed instead of me thinking I knew what he needed. He truly has been a blessing and so much joy this young man has brought to me. And I'm glad I was humble enough to receive what my son taught me. Number 2, mentors matter. Raising sons as a single woman can feel really overwhelming sometimes. Surrounding your son with great role models seems like it wouldn't be that hard. But for me, it wasn't as easy as you think. I have uncles, great uncles, but I never lived close to any of them. My dad is a great role model, but again, I didn't live close to my parents either. Kenden had coaches, and some of them were great role models, and some of them were the worst. Having high character, solid mentors will be important. Being proactive about surrounding your son in this kind of environment will be necessary. Trusting that men will choose to come along and be an example to your son was really naive, and for years I thought that was the case. Single moms, divorced moms, and women raising sons, we have to be proactive and intentional about finding our sons mentors to model. As women, we often feel that we can do it all, even raise a man. But the reality is we can't. Your pod assignment for this week is if you have a son who is at least 7 years old, get intentional about finding great mentors for them, be it at your church, signing them up in a youth organization that is surrounded and focused on raising young kings, boys and girls clubs, and men in your family if you live close to them. But whatever you do, don't assume for 1 second that you can do it all. The day will come for your son when there will be questions that you as a woman, while he loves you, he doesn't want to know your answer. So remember, mentors matter. Number 3, go with God. Lust, pornography, and lost were the 3 pitfalls my son Kenden said young black men are distracted by. Many of you moms listening may have a son that is dealing with 1, 2, or maybe all 3 of these pitfalls. With the access on their cell phones and social media, our sons have access to very adult things at young ages. If the world is going to give them lust, pornography, and make them feel lost, what are we going to give them? As a kid growing up in the South, my parents made me go to church. I didn't always like it, but as I grew older, I began to experience this God I heard about every Sunday for myself. Having a relationship with God became my cornerstone that even in all my party days in college, Black Beach, Freaknik, and, well, never mind. Those things couldn't erase the foundation that had been laid inside of me. Our sons need a spiritual foundation. If lust, pornography, and being lost are pitfalls my son felt comfortable to say, can you imagine what else they're dealing with that he didn't say? Being raised in the church didn't make me perfect or make my life free from struggle, disappointments, or setbacks. But it did direct me to a source that would assure me that even though weapons would form against me, they would not prosper. Spirituality for some in this generation may seem like antiquated religion and odd. But as mothers, would we rather our sons follow and chase the pitfalls of this world or go with God? Okay, queens, kings, and good people, that is it for part 2, mother and son relationships with my son, Kenden Reaves. This is Sharrona Reaves, and thank you guys for coming back for part 2. I'm so excited to tell you that tomorrow, July 21st, will mark the 1-year anniversary of These Three Things podcast. I cannot believe it's been a year. I cannot believe that we're at 31 episodes. This podcast has blessed me in so many ways. I have grown, I have learned, I have listened. My eyes have been opened. I've had some of the best conversations I've had in my life. I've met some of the dopest people I've ever met before. I've learned so much about new things and so many more things I have desired to learn from this podcast. I hope that you are enjoying it too. My only ask from you on my 1-year anniversary is if you have not written a review on Apple, if you have an iPhone, or you can also write a review on Pandora for These Three Things podcast, I ask that you do so. Spotify does not have a way where you can leave a review. So if you have an Android phone, it won't work for you. But if you have an Apple phone and you have not left a review for These Three Things and you have loved this podcast, my 1-year anniversary request is for you to go and leave a review and tell me what you loved about These Three Things podcast in its first year. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week for another episode of These Three Things.